are Google's most senior business representative. You drive everything from ad biz, country strategies, acquisitions. Basically, most of the revenue and people in this company fall under you. I guess my first question is, what's it like being the business guy in a company founded and run by engineers?
Well, it's a lot of fun. I mean, our engineers, our product managers are very much focused on building amazing consumer experiences. And I'm the one who pretty regularly steps in and says, hey, how about we try to make a little bit of money to continue financing all those amazing consumer experiences. And
well, you haven't done too badly on that.
We've done okay so far. And a fun part, or the most fun part of this job, is actually that I get to think a lot about our partners and our partner ecosystems, because the reality is, if you think about it, we cannot grow unless our partners grow and are successful. And it's very simple, because most of the contracts we have in place, if I go right to the business side of things, the way we actually make money in most cases is based on CPCs, CPVs, revenue share models, ROI on the partner side. So unless we grow our partner ecosystem successfully, unless we...
Not all of your partners in my business think it's such a terrific deal, but we'll get onto that in a minute.
we can talk about that, but the reality is, unless you grow in your business we can't really be successful on our end in a revenue share environment. And the same goes for our app developers. The same goes for our creators. The same goes for small and medium-sized companies. If a small and medium-sized business does not successfully transition into the digital world, there's no way over time that we can generate more business with them. So we have an inherent self-interest, and we love it, to make our partners successful.
And where are you? You're presumably also in charge of figuring out where the next billion-dollar businesses are, where the mega trends are.
So, yeah, I spend a bit of time on that as well.
So yeah. Where are they?
So maybe we talk about the current trends for a second, because it's important. Because a lot of people still get, actually, including ourselves, by the way, get the current trends a little bit wrong. And they're difficult. And the big near-term revolutions that we're going through at the moment are, number one, the mobile revolution, number two, the video revolution, and I would probably cluster the cloud and machine learning revolution as part of that as well. And now you're going to say, oh my God, we come all the way here to listen to Philipp talk about mobile. That's a little bit boring. But the reality is, the devil sits in the detail. And I just give you one little data point here. And this is not something I think we publicly share. When we analyze our advertisers, our partners' websites, over 70% of those mobile websites take over 10 seconds to load. Think about it. We all know the numbers. If you load over 3 seconds, you lose roughly 50% of your conversion rate. Goes for advertisers, goes for publisher. A single-digit percentage loads under 3 seconds. The simple basics. We still struggle with this.
So does that mean that there's still a huge amount to go, or does it mean that the impact will be transformative once you get load times down to 3 seconds?
So the impact is transformative. We know this because we have literally hundreds of people who do nothing else than help our advertising and publishing partners actually optimize something like the load speed for their mobile websites. And the second they actually get it right, the second they use the right tools, that's the reason why we launched a product like AMP, for example, the impact is actually very, very, very significant. So on the mobile revolution, the devil really sits in the details. Creating simpler UIs means you have to put a lot of the intelligence into the back end, which is actually more complex from a computer science and engineering perspective. So there's a lot of upside there. On the video revolution,
just before we get to video, that's kind of doing what we need, what you know you need to do better, or what we all know we need to do better. Where does mobile go after that?
So the next step after mobile, and we heard about it a little bit this morning, is obviously the segue to what we call the assistant step. It is a fundamental change in how we interact with computers, or it's a fundamentally new computing interface. It will not only be a different way of using the mobile device, which we've seen the variable examples this morning. It's literally going to be a smart assistant type, much more natural interaction across a whole lot of different surfaces. You can picture talking to a device or a system in your car, your television set. And by the way, you see a big part of this already today. We have roughly 20% of the searches on mobile are voice-based on Google Mobile. When you want to pull up a picture on Google Photos, the way I do it now, I just talk to my phone and I say, can you please show me the picture of my 4-year-old riding on a horse, which you obviously would never do.
And what do you do to make sure Google doesn't get left behind in that? I mean, others are obviously progressing
well,
in leaps and bounds too.
The good part of this is the core of who we are is a search and information company, and I think the assistant play is a natural extension where all of the investments we've done historically, from a machine learning perspective, from a data infrastructure perspective, all the other investments are actually going to be very, very helpful. So we think about it as literally a fundamental shift in how people interact with information, and I think we're going to do pretty okay.
What about video? You mentioned that next. You know, VR, AR. I think you're big on AR. You think that's the great big new thing?
So
is that right?
it's very similar to mobile, leading to mobile search, leading to assistance. The same we see on the video side. Obviously, video is huge. Every metric we look at, we have 1 billion hours of watch time per day at the moment on YouTube. We have like 400 hours being uploaded per minute. I mean, the numbers are just incredible, incredible high numbers, and it has significantly moved on, as you all here know, from cats on skateboards to Matt asked the question in the morning, how many of you have used the how-to to do something? I learned like so many things on YouTube now. So how-to, for example, how to do something is one of our fastest growing search categories. And the next step in that evolution is obviously going to lead towards a more VR environment. VR is our definition of virtual reality. So think about a big headset that basically covers your eyes. I'm personally the most excited about the AR evolution, the longer term revolution, where you can basically superimpose the digital world onto the real world. And if you think through the consequences of this, I mean, this is going to be mind-blowing. It's a little bit more...
So where do you see those big... I mean, it's not just gamers, right? Where
Far from that. This is the use case that everybody obviously thinks about. It's just going to be a gaming environment. But we look at AR as a next-generation computing interfaces. If I can superimpose every digital piece of information onto the real world, my mobile device could be just a screen superimposed into my field of vision. The discussion we are having at the moment, I could be here or maybe I'm not here. Think about
that would save your jet lag.
That would definitely save my jet lag and would give me the ability to spend a lot more time with my kids. If you think about older people, if you think about people who can't afford to travel, if you think about sick people, there's like so many use cases if you think about the world of medicine. So it's a fascinating world emerging. I mean, I have been in, this is a little bit more the VR side, but I've been in simulations in our labs where literally after 10 minutes, I begged the folks not to let me back into real life. And I have a pretty good real life. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating what you see emerging. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a demo where I was just flying through basically our Google Earth environment. And I was taking a few tours of Paris and then flew over to the Tower Bridge, which is obviously not in Paris. And it's just like absolutely fascinating
environment. Do you really think that's going to really take off? That VR is, I mean, AR I totally get. I can see how that's incredibly useful in all kinds of things, superimposing. But VR, where is the use case for that?
I feel that VR is going to be an interim step towards AR. I think there are use cases in the entertainment environment, the cases I just mentioned. So personally, if you were to ask me if I'm sitting on a plane, I would love to have a full immersive experience of watching something. Like I can totally see myself using a VR type of device. But again, the longer term, more fascinating trend that really will change the way our children grow up fundamentally is the AR revolution. Yeah, the mixing and meshing of basically real and digital world. Yeah.
One more big picture trend, machine learning.
Yes.
Obviously, your colleagues at DeepMind, they've either already have spoken about it or will do. But what does it actually mean for Google and for your company? I mean, I think it's Sundar who said that Google is an AI-first company.
Yes,
what does that mean?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Machine learning has several really big implications for us. The first one is on the consumer side, and this is the one we just talked about a little bit. I mean, everything that you see on the assistant side is basically based on machine learning. Machine learning goes into a lot of other areas of our products, by the way. If you look at how do we keep YouTube clean of copyright infringements, our Content ID system is based on machine learning to a large extent. Why can we identify the picture of, you've seen the example of somebody eating a watermelon or something comparable in Google Photos? That's all machine learning. Our spam filtering, our ability to basically translate now, our ability to recognize voice or natural language processing is all machine learning based. So all of our consumer products and our business products are basically fundamentally built on the next generation of machine learning layers. The other revolution that I see coming on the machine learning side is on the business side. And this is the one that I find personally probably the most fascinating because at the moment people think, well, there's only a few companies who actually have access to machine learning. But what is going to happen because of the type of products they had to build? But what you will see literally as we speak is that those players, including ourselves, will offer machine learning as a service. So what we'll do is we'll take the latest and greatest of our machine learning capabilities and offer it to other companies so they can, at very small incremental costs, similar to how we've done it with the cloud side, which has really driven a lot of innovation for startups and other small companies, we'll offer machine learning to literally every company in the world. And what you will see there is a radical transformation of how traditional businesses actually operate, because they can go the same as you can go to the full Google Cloud infrastructure in one afternoon. You will be able, in a very short amount of time, to basically switch to the best of Google machine learning. And this will be so disruptive, it's hard to imagine where this will go.
So those are all the big and wonderful opportunities that you will provide. Now I think it's time to ask a few of the slightly tougher questions, because the result of all of this is that you are hoovering up vast amounts of data, exponentially growing amounts of data, which I think raises quite a lot of questions, both about privacy and about the bargain between you and your users in terms of who owns that data and who gets the gains from it. So at what point does that current relationship between you and your users in terms of ownership of and returns from data need to shift?
So I've seen the latest cover on The Economist.
You can do my PR for me.
If I remember correctly, it had oil platforms on it. And then our logos and others superimposed on it. Nice graphics, but the reality is data is quite different from oil. It's important to understand. Data is not a scarce resource. Data is not diminishable. My consumption of data does not fundamentally impact your
so why
ability
don't you give your data away to everybody?
To consume data, because the data should be owned and controlled in the end by the user. And that's the number one rule that we're trying to pay attention to. So of course there's the privacy and security aspect to it, no discussion. It's one of the biggest, highest values we're holding. Keep your user data safe, keep your user data under the control of the user. But in the end, it's the user has to control that. That's why we have, for example, revamped completely our My Account abilities. You can go in, you can see exactly what we have on you, you can delete it.
Wait a second, the user has no share in the monetization that you can do of their data. Do you need to change that equation? Do you need to start paying me for all the useful things that you're doing with the data that comes from my search?
Indirectly, we're paying you because we're creating an amazing amount of free services that you get to use. And what we need in order to provide you those services is some of your data, right? So I think you get actually a lot of user value. I very rarely hear users complaining about the fact that most of our products are free. And if you want to have control over your data, you have it. If you want to have first you need transparency, you have it. You need control over your data. We even have a feature which is called Takeout, where you can take all of your data that you have stored at Google and take it wherever you want. So I think we're pretty...
So how do you feel about, the Europeans are now doing this in the financial services sector, where they're basically saying you tick a box and then anybody other than your bank can have access to your financial sector data. Do you think that's the kind of thing that we should have more broadly, so that I can, as a user, decide whom I allow access to my data to, and rather than having these siloed systems where you have a whole chunk of data, Facebook has a whole chunk of data, others have a whole chunk of data, I can integrate it and sell it to whoever I want?
Well, it's something you suggested in the article, if I remember correctly. But the reality is something that you need to decide as a user. Do you really want to give governments full access to all of your data? I mean, is this really the best path forward? I mean, if you have full takeout control, you can take the data that you have and take it somewhere else. I think it's in the end the user's decision. I'm not sure as a user you would really want to do this. Like I have a much higher trust level into Google keeping my data safe than into many governments keeping my data safe, actually.
I'm not necessarily suggesting the government should have it. I'm suggesting that maybe I should have a little bit more control over who has my data.
But that's under your control. You can do that, actually.
Well, only by moving away from you completely?
No, not by moving from us away. You can take out, you can do a takeout and you can take a copy. It doesn't mean you have to fully move away from us, no.
And what about the argument that because of the network effects that come from the amount of data you have allowing you to generate more services that I love, which give you more and more data, that in the end, you and a handful of other companies just simply get too powerful such that there is no possibility for competition to really emerge? Which is it's not an argument necessarily that we have made, but it's a broad argument that's out there. There are now plenty of people in, plenty of op-eds calling for Google to be broken up and other similar companies to be broken up. What's your reaction to that?
So I'm fully aware of this discussion, obviously. And look, you have to understand that we live in a very, very, very competitive environment. There's a lot of players out there. The technology space in general is highly competitive. There are a lot of players out there who are extremely successful without having an original set of data or a big database. If you look at the Snaps of this world, you look at the Twitters of this world, you look at the Spotifys, you look at super successful companies we have here, like the Supercells, we talked about the Kings, we have big partners like Trivago. They're all building very successful business models without having a large, big data set. Even Google, the search engine, started without having a really big data set. You take traditional companies like, take the self-driving car example. Everybody, the Teslas of this world, the Fords of this world, the Daimlers of this world, including ourselves, but you look at all those players, they started, and very successful from what I can tell at the moment, moving into those businesses without having large data sets.
So, but now, with machine learning, AI, and an exponential increase in data, you can see potential rivals long before they become potential rivals, and you just buy them.
No, that's not how we think about it. Like that's not how we think about it. We're not. We give our data, like the trends data, by the way. We give to everybody. Everybody can analyze that data. And in general, don't overestimate the importance of data. I mean, take a hypothetical scenario. If some alien would steal all of our data, we would probably be up and running pretty quickly again. If somebody were to steal all of our engineers, we'd be in serious trouble. We would be in serious trouble. So you have to look at it like from the information empowerment perspective. The data is just one layer, but what you can do with the data, the algorithms that you can build, the engineers you have over time is the much more valuable asset than the core data layer.
What about, let's think of it in a different way, as a business risk. Regardless of the merits of this view, it is a view that is gaining traction, and politicians are known to do not always the optimal thing, and it may become a sort of growing meme, and it frankly already is in parts of Europe, that you're far too powerful and that something needs to be done. So how do you, as Google's chief business person, think about the business risk involved in that and involved in the sort of political environment you're working in, and how do you guard against that?
So number one, again, I'm aware of those worries. And it's very normal that you have regulators and people taking a very close look at a company like ours the second you have reached our size, and it's our responsibility to work with them and explain to them what we're doing. I personally feel, and maybe this is the difference because I live in the heart of the Silicon Valley, that we are in a highly competitive environment. If you just look at the Facebooks of this world, the Amazons of this world, if you look at what's going on in China with a WeChat, if you look at the number of players that successfully strive on platforms like the Android operating system, they actually enable competition to a point that I've barely ever seen it before, similar as the example I gave to the cloud business, because we and others opened up the cloud infrastructure to so many other companies, means in one afternoon you can actually go and build a fantastic business, and you heard it before from Supercell. So we actually have competition all over the place. We have vertical search engines. We have travel search engines that are in very specific segments. So I don't feel at all like we're in a non-competitive, guaranteed to win environment as Google, frankly.
That may or may not be right, but I suspect it won't cut much ice with politicians who are determined to see you as dangers rather than as the kind of great saviors of the world. And there's definitely been a shift in the political environment. And that's come at a time with the concerns about fake news and all of these things where it used to be that you could absolve yourself from liability of both moral and sort of technical of anything that went on your platforms. That clearly in the court of public opinion is now changing. So it's not enough, I don't think, for you to say, well, it's a very competitive world out there, we're just one player. You have to presumably have a strategy that goes beyond that. So
definitely. So by saying we're in a very competitive environment, I'm not saying we shouldn't do a lot of outreach. We shouldn't be constantly explaining. We shouldn't constantly be talking about what we're doing exactly. We shouldn't engage all the time. So I see how the climate has shifted. I'm fully aware of this. And it's our responsibility to reach out. It's our responsibility to partner. It's our responsibility to explain why we're building platforms that actually help ecosystems. It's not that obvious in many cases. It's our responsibility to explain why actually in certain cases platforms are great for innovation and great for competition rather the other way around. So you're fundamentally right. We need to dramatically increase the type of outreach, the number of outreaches we do, and it's in our responsibility. So I'm not even negating that. Yes.
And just lastly, one area of that which is obviously close to my heart, but is very much in the sort of focus right now is this whole question of fake news and controversial content. You know, are you doing as much as you can do, and should you be doing more, and what should it be?
So I think you can always do more, no doubt about it. We take the problem of fake news extremely seriously. I've said this multiple times before. We're spending a lot of time and energy on it. We've just a few weeks ago announced a whole set of changes that we're doing, which have to do with how our algorithms work. Because the fake news problem, to a certain extent, is like the spam problems we had in the past. I mean, it's something we really need to get under control. We're probably not the biggest surface areas for it. You've heard, I think, Jimmy Wales say this morning that actually Google News is very, very clean because of the way it operates. But it is a challenge. It is something we need to invest in. I think some of the changes we've launched are actually really working well. We've demonetized also hundreds of bad publishers over the last few months. So we've been super active in it, and we spent a lot of time discussing. And should we do more? Yes, we can always do more. But have we not taken it seriously? I don't think so. I think we're actually really taking it seriously.
Philipp, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.